Saluton comrades. In this video I am going to analyze art and media in general, plus its developing prices in different economic systems. Let's start with some definitions. Stephen Farthing defined art as a product created by humans in a creative process. The Oxford Dictionary defined art as a diverse range of human activities in creating visual or auditory products, or by performing something, like acting or dancing. Its goal is to cause an emotional reaction while expressing the artist's imaginative or technical skill. Wow. However, definitions are irrelevant. Even if we can't agree on a definition, we all do know and understand art. We know the Mona Lisa is art, and at least for some people, this is art too. Now just look at the historical development and some characteristics I made up myself to better understand it. There exist two different kinds of bonds, which prevent art and most media to get duplicated infinitely. The first type describes the bond between art and artist. So for example, the play in the theater depends on the actors. However, there are exceptions from this bond. The painting don't depend on the painter, like the play to the actors. Paintings still exist, even if the painter are already dead. We know cave paintings, but the humans who created it passed away long ago. In general, I would describe this first type of bond between art and artist as the bond between artist and an event. So theater and dance are events, even music depends on the musician. Does it? Nowadays it seems normal that music is something alienated from the artist. However, this wasn't the case all the time. If you wanted to listen to music before the recording of audio signals was invented by Thomas Edison with his phonograph, you had to go to a live performance by musicians. Sure, today you still can go to live performances, but this still doesn't stop you from listening to all the tracks all the time. Therefore, this first kind of bond gets destroyed by the technological possibility to record visual and audiovisual performances. The second kind of bond also prevents the art to get duplicated infinitely, not by depending the art to the artist, rather than to tie the art to its uniqueness. You can't just copy the Mona Lisa, because this is not a creative process. But with the invention of photography, you can give people the impression of the art, even though they never entered a museum. They know how the Mona Lisa looks like. So giving the impression of the original does not preserve the use value of the art, which is causing an emotional reaction. This can be achieved with photography, as I said before. And what about writings? I mean, the message of the writing is built up with the letters, so there is no bond like the second type here. But also, it don't depends on the author, because writings are not an event. We can still read Tolstoy, even though he is dead. So technically, writings don't have a bond which prevents infinite duplicating. Therefore, we can look at history of writings to confirm the next step. If the bonds of both types get destroyed by technology, we can see what happens now in the digital age and compare that to writings. Nowadays, all the bonds of media are broken. Be it photos, music or movies, everything can get duplicated with some small combinations. Before entering the digital age, the art or other media were saved on floppy disks, cassettes or CDs, which carried it to the user. This would of course mean that the production costs for these carriers were the only thing which stopped the infinite duplication. Luckily, this is over. Today the production costs of most media are the small amount of electricity in our computers. And, we come back to this later, the wage. The floppy disks, cassettes, CDs and so on are no longer necessary. With the internet, we can share videos, photos, music and all the other stuff with the rest of the world, just within a few seconds. One question remains: what will happen to the price? Well, we can look at this problem from two sides. The classic economic side, with demand and supply, and we can look at the labor theory of value. We will see in the end that both leads to the same conclusion. Of course, this is a strong simplification. You see here a diagram. As you can see, green symbolizes the demand, while red symbolizes the supply. At the point of intersection, we can read out the first price, P1. P1 is the price of the commodity on the market equilibrium, which means there is not a too great supply or a too low supply, rather than that supply and demand can cancel each other out. Now we have to think, what would happen to the price of for example, a song which is traded on that market. If this song, or rather that song file, can be duplicated with just some combinations on the keyboard. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and now we have a greater quantity of these song files on the market. It's the same song, which means we do not look at the competition between different songs. No, we look at the same market where the supply is greater than a moment ago. So we have to shift the supply graph to the right and calculate the new price P2 at the height of intersection. You should recognize that P1 is larger than P2, which means that a larger quantity leads to a smaller price. But wait, we can raise the quantity infinitely. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and so on. The price has to fall to zero if new copies of the commodity can be created without any production costs. Now let's use the labor theory of value. The central point is that the exchange value of a commodity is nothing more than the abstract, socially necessary human labor required to produce that commodity. Okay, but what the hell does this mean? Well, I should explain it. Our economy is based on exchange. But how do we know how many socks are equal to a desk in order to exchange them? We can understand this if you look to the necessary labor which was put into the commodity while the ongoing production process. But different kinds of labor requires different difficult kinds of work. Sewing is in need of mental concentration, while building a wall is in need of a good physical constitution. In order to exchange anything, you have to abstract from the kind of work and just look to the abstract human labor put into the commodity. You look at the time the workers spent working to create a certain quantity of that commodity. But since there are other producers of that one commodity, there will be competition between them. The producer who can create a larger quantity in the same amount of time will naturally have an advantage. The exchange value then can be calculated as the average production time per commodity. So the person with a sewing machine can produce 50 pants in 1 hour. The person without such a machine needs the whole hour to produce only 1 pant. On a market where only these two people sell pants, the average production time and therefore the exchange value is 2.353 minutes for a single pant, which would mean the person who can sell 50 pants can get in exchange something worth 50 times 2.353 minutes, which means this person can get something worth 170.647 minutes. And the person who can only sell one surely is fucked. So we now understand how the labor theory of value works. But how does the art fit in it? Is art just a regular commodity? To answer that, I will quote from Pierre-Joseph Proudhon's What is Property? In order that the bard of Achilles may get his due reward, he must first make himself wanted. That done, the exchange of his verse for a fee of any kind, being a free act, must be at the same time a just act. That is, the poet's fee must be equal to his product. Now what is the value of this product? Let us suppose, in the first place, that this Iliad, this chef d'oeuvre that is to be equitably rewarded, is really above price, that we do not know how to appraise it. If the public, who are free to purchase it, refuse to do so, it is clear that, the poem being unexchangeable, its intrinsic value will not be diminished, but that its exchangeable value or its productive utility will be reduced to zero, will be nothing at all. Then we must seek the amount of wages to be paid between infinity on the one hand and nothing on the other, at an equal distance from each, since all rights and liberties are entitled to equal respect. In other words, it is not the intrinsic value, but the relative value of the thing sold that needs to be fixed. The question grows simpler. What is this relative value? To what reward does a poem like the Iliad entitle its author? Has every creation of industry a venal, absolute, unchangeable and consequently legitimate and true value? Yes. Can every product of man be exchanged for some other products of man? Yes, again. How many nails is a pair of shoes worth? If we can solve this appalling problem, we shall have the key of the social system for which humanity has been searching for 6,000 years. In the presence of this problem, the economist recalls confused. The peasant who can neither read nor write replies without hesitation, as many as can be made in the same time and with the same expense. The absolute value of a thing, then, is its cost in time and expense. How much is a diamond worth, which costs only the labor of picking it up? Nothing. It is not a product of man. How much will it be worth when cut and mounted? The time and expense which it has cost the laborer. Why then is it sold at so high a price? Because men are not free. Society must regulate the exchange and distribution of the rarest things, as it does that of the most common ones, in such a way that each may share in the enjoyment of them. What then is that value which is based upon opinion, delusion, injustice, and robbery? By this rule, it is easy to reconcile everybody. If the mean term, which we are searching for, between an infinite value and no value at all, is expressed in the case of every product by the amount of time and expense which the product costs, a poem which has costs its author 30 years of labor and an outlay of 10,000 francs in journeys, books, etc. must be paid for by the ordinary wages received by a laborer during 30 years, plus 10,000 francs indemnity for expenses incurred. Suppose the whole amount to be 50,000 francs. If the society which gets the benefit of the production include 1,000,000 of men, my share of the debt is 5 centimes. So, besides that irrelevant calculation in the end, we have seen that art is handled like any other commodity. A song, which you only need to put labor into once in order to produce it, has the same exchange value as another song which required the same amount of work. We know that already from all forms of media, from writings, songs, videos and paintings. They all just need one expense of work in the production. The value of every duplicate of that original work is nothing more than the value of the material carriers of the media. For books, these material carriers are the pages, the cover, the ink, and so on. Now you should understand that this carrier withers more and more away in the age of the internet. The duplications only need the work to press Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, like this. The total quantity of files on the market only have the total exchange value of the original file, because the duplication requires nearly no work. So what would be the price of one of these files on the digital market? First assumption has to be that there's a demand, but this should be given anyway. The price would then be calculated like this. Price of one file equals sum of all exchange values of all files divided by total quantity of all files. But we know that the sum of all exchange values is only the exchange value of the original file, because the required work for every duplicate can be taken as 0. If the quantity of these files goes to infinity, which it does, because it's possible, then we can calculate the price as a limit of the exchange value of the original file divided by x as x goes to infinity. Therefore, the price will fall to 0. We have seen that both ways of calculation showed that the prices will fall to 0 in the digital age, when both bonds are broken. At least they should. But wait, they don't fall to 0. Why? Sure, because this is the internet. You will always find a way to get what you want for free. It's the internet after all. But why aren't the prices 0? Because there are some international restrictions and rights to protect artists. Copyrights are preventing infinite duplication. And this is good, because on a free market there is no guarantee that the artist even get paid the work he put in the original file. Let's look to the place of fairy tale magic and capital. Like any other wrong or illogical assumptions, for example pi would be a rational number, a stateless but capitalistic society leads to contradictions. In Ancapistan, there would be the need for a monopoly on violence to enforce these copyrights. But this again would be a contradiction to that stateless part of that society. Otherwise, art can only be produced in the free time of the people and not with the goal to create profits, since every art has a price of 0. Which would lead to a poor culture, like I said, a fairy tale or a horrifying society. Well done, comrades. Thank you for watching. This is my first video, so if you have any remarks or you spotted some mistakes, please write it in the comments. And yeah, see you next time.